All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get this party started. Time for some My Hero Academia. And it appears that we are not going on break for this chapter, which means we're getting one next week. So, where we left off was pretty much, you know what? Let me just go backwards. Let me go backwards. Go to chapter 339. Hatsume was talking to, Midoriya and the rest of them. She gave them new pieces of gear, though they're not as powerful as the one that they had before, due to not having the blueprints for Ida stuff, and due to, not having the schematics for Midoriya stuff. And as that's going on, she reassures them that the support class has their own brand of heroics, which involves them, helping out the heroes. Inventing stuff is how the support course does heroics. That's what Hatsume said. And as that's going on, Mount Lady is letting them know that Class 1A of UA's Hero Corps Search Squad assemble. Our best case scenario, Mount Lady is saying our best case scenario is still finding and mopping up the Liberation Front and the League of Villains as soon as possible. That would solve this whole mess, so we're not abandoning the original plan altogether. And standing around all dazed and confused is just playing into our enemy's hands. And as this is going on, and as they have their plans set together, we have the big three with Fatcom, helping out people out in the sticks as they're taking on villains and protecting people. Out someplace else, it has All Might with Hawk saying, so about our plan B, let's review the key info about the other battle that could decide it all. So now, it's time to find out what All Might meant. In today's chapter, chapter 340. And it doesn't say the name of the chapter quite yet, but we're at the Central Hospital. Now, one thing about this is the fact that the Central Hospital is where they've been sending the Nomu in order to find out how to combat them, learn about the Nomu and their secrets and everything. But we're at the Central Hospital now. To collaborate in secret with this key facility, several police stations have moved their bases of operations nearby. League of Villains... What does this say? It says League of Villains Paranormal League of Villains Paranormal Liberation Front Counterforce HQ. So that's pretty much where they're stationed right now. And it has All Might saying, we're awaiting Aoyama's exam results. And then Hawk says, the business with Aoyama means we'll be forced to take decisive action all at once. We deem each of you here to be trustworthy based on certain factors regarding your situations and actions, so we're ready to move ahead with this conversation. All right, here we go with Hawks. We're getting some exposition. Endeavor, Genis, and the other big heroes are in command out in the field at the moment. And since this classified meeting had to be thrown together in a hurry, we're keeping our circle nice and small. Safety first and all. And we have Ragdoll who's there. And she says, taking every precaution? Precaution? But still, come on. I sure wish Ryugu and the gang could be here, meow. And then Hawk says, sorry about that. It's not like we doubt their loyalty or anything.
Yeah?
And then Hawks does the same thing. Yeah. And then she says, they're out there using my search quirk for evil, meow. So I'm here to help however I can. Let's hear the key points of this plan. And as this is going on, All Might flips some coins up into the air with a pen. And he says, whether we're talking about plan A or plan B, what we have to do, no matter what, is split them up. Based on the data recorded during Star and Stripes battle, Tomura Shigaraki is now far more powerful than even All for One, and everyone who witnessed the fight in Kamino has a decent idea of All for One's strength. Also, they have that mind meld they exploited when attacking Tartarus. This goes beyond just the communication via radio waves, but it's not clear to what extent they actually share thoughts with each other. Should they attack together, we have no hope of victory. And then one dude says, then why don't we double team Star? Why didn't they double team Star? And All Might says, she could have spoken his name All for One, meaning New Order's rules would have worked on him, I think. To win this war, we need to get those two at least 10 kilometers apart. That's the bare minimum requirement. Then Suguuchi chimes in saying, of course, they'll do everything they can to make sure that won't happen. That's right, Suguuchi. That far-spreading, all-consuming fire and the terror it instills, it's a threat we became aware of through the attack on the kids' training camp. Yes, we'll be stonewalled so long as Dabi joins their vanguard. And then Ragdoll says, so splitting up All for One and Shigaraki means getting Dabi out of the way too. Not just Dabi, says one of them. Says the Sansa, the cat guy. He says, not just Dabi. And All Might says, exactly, all of them. Every one of the enemy's major operatives. We must divide and conquer one by one. To that end, we have to lure each of these villains to their defeat. That's the plan. One at a time. Then one of them says, oh, is that all? Pretty optimistic thinking. And then another one says, easier said than done. And then All Might says, fair enough. Which is why we need a strategy to make that happen. And then Suguuchi says, you mean Aoyama? And All Might says, the boy is still in turmoil. Born quirkless, his very life was exploited as a resource. And Suguuchi says, I sympathize, but we're weighing our own feelings against the fate of the world, and the fact remains that he turned his back on decent society. Based on my position, I have no choice but to proceed with caution. And All Might says, I choose to have faith in young Aoyama. I want to trust him, but I do trust his teacher, Shoto Aizawa. And Eraserhead is directly in front of Aoyama right now. Hey, what's going on, Rax? I'm doing good. Reading through this chapter today. And we have one of the doctors that are there with one of the doctors who are there, or at least one of the orderlies that's there with Aizawa right now saying, after a full exam, we found no irregularities. Brainwaves were normal, too. So, Lady Nagant's fate was courtesy of something All for One obtained after his grand defeat by All Might. In retrospect, if he'd really planted an explosive ability in the boy that would trigger the event of betrayal, then why murder that other peon as a lesson? Why threaten the family with death for lying to him? Why leave anything to the imagination? The only thing All for One planted was a seed of fear inside the boy and his parents. And then Aizawa speaks. Are you scared? And this causes Aoyama to jump, but he still doesn't say anything. And then Aizawa continues saying, you won't find many friends in life that'll stick up for you like that. What do you fear? All for One himself? And Aoyama speaks, yes. I'm also scared that I can never sparkle and shine as they do. The more they express their faith in me, the more I lose faith in myself. Even if I can take the hand they offer, even if I find myself face to face with All for One, who's to say I wouldn't make the same terrible choice all over again? That is what I fear. I want to leave it all behind, to find some dark corner of the world untouched by light where I can wait for death to take me, nothing more. Then Aizawa starts to move. You may be given lenient, and then Aizawa says, you may be given leniency, but your sins will be with you forever. Aoyama, once this war is over, you may no longer have a home at UA. Those friends of yours like to sugarcoat things, but I'll tell it to you straight. I'll have to rip out that fear that's taken root in him by force. This is what Aizawa is saying in his mind. I'll have to rip out that fear that's taken root in him by force. And Aizawa just gets mad scary and gets close to him saying, you will fight. It's the only thing you can do. I know all is lost unless we win this. I know that. To achieve victory, I must now be a pawn for our side, just like them, as their equal. I understand all that. And then Aizawa says, maybe we are no different than All for One. That's definitely the case when it comes to how we intend to use you. That said, I won't allow you to slink off haunted by those sins and die a pathetic, quiet death. And Aoyama just looks at him. And Aizawa says, not as long as I'm a hero course teacher and you're my student. And then he just thinks with Aoyama, Aoyama just thinks of when Aizawa says, "I still have no intention of expelling you." Then he continues to talk to Aoyama, saying, "Because none of the lessons I teach my students are about living a life burdened by guilt. As ashamed and despicable as you feel, you will walk alongside the friends who still reach out to you." And then he thinks of Kurogiri and says, "We will protect you. I guarantee it. Stick with them, and you'll be okay." And Aoyama has like a look of a little bit of hope in his eyes, just a bit. And then Aoyama says, "But what can a single miscreant like me even accomplish?" And then Aizawa's thinking to himself, of course he's still scared. Anyone would be. And then he says, "You're not the only one I'm putting on this path," which is why someone says, "Hey, it's time, let's go." That path is one we'll all walk together. And who is it? Who is it that's being called on? It's no one else but Shinzo himself. And now we get the title drop of this chapter. Chapter 340, the story of how we all became heroes, part 3. This was nice. This was a nice chapter. It really was. This was another talking chapter, and we're not going on break, so we're getting another one next week. But this was another talking chapter where it just felt nice how, despite all the evil stuff that's going on right now, we still got people like Aizawa going out of their way to reassure his students that, sure, you're going to be living with these sins for the rest of your life, but I'm not going to let you shirk off into the distance and then just die with those sins without at least trying to live a better life first. Because first of all, we got a whole conversation between a small-knit group of trusted people with Tsukauchi and Hawks and All Might about how their plan, basically what the other plan, is to take down each member of the big heavy hitters, the major operatives. That includes Himiko Toga and Spinner and Dabi, all these high-ranking officers that are directly under All for One and Shigaraki. Their plan is to divide each one of them and take them down one at a time. Especially Dabi, his name came up more. His name came up like in bold when they was talking about him. But that's the plan, to take them down one at a time. And they're also trying to work out to get Shigaraki away from All for One. Because even though they don't have access to their compatibility, their capacity to communicate with each other via the weird mind meld that they have. They want to spread out the gap. I can't find my words today. I'm so sorry. They want to spread it out as far as possible to keep those two from communicating with each other. They don't know the fine details of it or whether it is the perfect way for them to communicate without having to use radio waves. But they want to separate Shigaraki from All for One, like All for One's original body versus Shigaraki as he is right now. At least put a couple of kilometers between them. And then separate all the members of the Paranormal Liberation Front and take them down one at a time so that the only person left is All for One. And from the information that they gathered from the people that were there with Star, when Star and Stripes was fighting Shigaraki / All for One, he's more powerful than All for One has ever been. So the best chance they have of winning this war is to separate everyone, just to give them a fighting chance. So that's going on with the hero side. Then we have Aizawa speaking to Aoyama. Just trying, because Aoyama is just filled with fear. Because they pretty much surmise that All for One doesn't have a bomb inside of Aoyama, but Aoyama is so filled with fear of All for One that he's scared to do anything. Just the mere thought of All for One having the capacity to kill anyone around him, even himself and his family, is enough to instill fear into this child so much that he's just resolved himself to just dying in a corner in some far off part of the world by himself. That's how much of a presence All for One has put on Aoyama over the years. But luckily, Aizawa is here to, try and literally, quite literally in this chapter, scare the fear out of Aoyama. Good old Aizawa. So now we are face to face with, this is a whole nother chapter of how we all became heroes, part 3. So not only do we have Class 1As of UA's high school being part of a search squad, but it looks like Shinzo is going to be joining in on it as well, if the last panel of this chapter is anything to go by. I have to admit, over the course of the entire series of My Hero Academia, I have never been one to just analyze how this story makes you think in terms of its characters and world building and character development, and how the narrative just goes on, and how despite the themes of this story has remained the same since the beginning. Like, you too can be a hero and stuff like that. And that's a theme that has been constantly going throughout all of this. Even when certain people who are heroes have messed up and think that it's impossible for them to ever come back into the light since they've been in the dark for so long, there are still other characters that say, like, no, there's still a way for you to come out of this. Don't think that just because you've done a couple of bad things that we're just going to give up on you. It doesn't mean that. You can still stand up. You can still be a hero. Like, the themes of this series have been consistent with every single chapter, but to see it reach to a point where it's not just Midoriya who's saying this, it's not just All Might who's saying this. Everyone is getting in on being what it means to, it's everyone exemplifying what it means to be a hero. Not people who do what they do for the glory and recognition, but they do it because it's right. They do it because it is the only right thing to do. They don't do it for the fame and the fortune. They do it because innocent lives are far more important than a paycheck. They do it because it is the morally right thing to do. It is right for the world. And the fact that more and more people, including like classes of 1A and classes of all the other people, all the other students, are seeing that this new generation of heroes like Uraraka and Ida and Bakugo and Midoriya, they're seeing that this is going to be the new age that introduces the new generation, that introduces a new age of heroism that the world needs. Because the previous generation, people were stagnated, especially when All Might was on the scene. People were stagnated and complacent due to the fact that of all the security that heroes brought them, to the point where they did not care about anyone else but themselves. And they saw it as the hero's job to take care of people who need help. Case in point, Shigaraki, after, accidentally massacring his entire family, when he was out on the streets, ragged and alone, his quirk not under control, having freshly accidentally killed his family, desperately needed a hero. But no one wanted to help him. They just left it to the heroes. That's complacency. They became so lazy that they just saw it as the hero's job to help. Just to help. Just a random act of kindness. That's something heroes do. That was then. We're in now, where people are starting to realize, wow, we really let this happen because we just sat on the sidelines and watched all the heroes do all the work. When did we become the audience to these heroes up on this theater called the world, where we just watch what they did from the sidelines, and it was the heroes who did all the heavy lifting, all the hard work, even something as simple as looking at a child who needs help and helping them. Just leave it to the heroes. When did we become like this? So this new generation of heroes are introducing that new age of thinking, like, it's not just the hero's job to be a hero. Anyone can be a hero. You don't even need a superpower in order to do it. So I've consistently loved how this story has gone from being about, yeah, there's heroes, but this society is kind of messed up, and that's why things keep going the way it is, to the point where now society is slowly but surely starting to see the error of its ways and starting to think, maybe it's best if we could try and, lend a hand with the heroes as well. Change this society for better so that people like Shigaraki and All for One don't rise up again. Because it starts with us. Like, that type of thinking is now starting to slowly permeate its way through society as they realize that maybe we shouldn't have put so much pressure. Because the thing about it, they put so much pressure on the heroes that they basically base their livelihood on the hero's success. If the heroes failed, then their world failed. That's pretty much where the world for them is at as of right now. And you saw through the story how the entire society of Japan turned on the heroes, saying, like, it's your job as heroes to protect us. What are you doing? Why are you retiring? Are you running from your duty to protect us and to defeat villains? None of this would have happened if it wasn't for you, and placing all the blame on the people whose job was simply just to protect the innocent and preserve the peace. They did it because some of them did it because they wanted to, and some of them did it for the fame and glory. But at the end of the day, these heroes are people that regular civilians would just rely on for everything, not thinking about whether what they could do could help out, but just thought about, well, it's this hero's job to do this, so why should I bother lending a hand? And if something bad happens, then it's the hero's fault because they didn't do enough, not realizing that these heroes are actual people. I'm going on a massive rant here about this story, but just seeing how things are going narrative-wise to a state of the world in My Hero where it was only the heroes who were doing the heavy lifting, and if they didn't do their jobs, then society would cast them out, to a point where society is starting to realize maybe we should work with the heroes as best we can to change society for the better, so that we don't have another moment where All for One or Shigaraki is, destroying an entire county or entire cities or anything like that. You don't need a quirk to be a hero. So I'm glad to see the narrative go in that direction, because when it was going down, when Shigaraki had destroyed the hospital and killed numerous people, it was like society turned into the worst possible villain that the heroes could ever have. Heroes who couldn't stand it any longer left, and they were ridiculed and, disrespected because of it. Even the heroes who stuck around to try and save people in the destroyed cities were still ridiculed and told that they were useless simply because of the state of the world that they were in, by civilians who did absolutely nothing to help keep this from happening. See what I'm saying? Civilians back then were so complacent with letting other people solve their own problems that they forgot how to solve things for themselves. But I'm glad the narrative is going in a direction where the mindset of that between civilians without quirks and heroes is slowly starting to become less and less prominent as it was at the beginning of the series. I've been going on for way too long ranting about this, but this is just, when it comes to the story of One Piece, I psychoanalyze this series more than I do One Piece. Did I say One Piece? I meant to say My Hero Academia. During this entire series of My Hero Academia, I psychoanalyze it more than any other series that I've read in its entirety. Even more than One Piece, and I could spend hours just talking about that series. But just seeing the narrative, it's engaging. It's really good writing. I don't see why people have a problem with it. It's just really good it's just really good to me. But I'm looking forward to the next chapter, which is next week. No One Piece chapter next week, but we are getting a My Hero Academia chapter next week, so I'm looking forward to that one. My goodness, we are almost done with January. Can you believe that we're already in the month of January? We're starting to come up to the end of it pretty soon at some point. It's crazy. But that's all I got for this chapter of My Hero Academia. I'm looking forward to the next one. All I can say is I'm looking forward to when they finally beat All for One and I see the world change and all the efforts that Kohei has made for his story of My Hero Academia comes to a satisfying and pivotal and beautiful end. I'm not trying to rush the series, but when all is over and said and done for this series, it's going to be one of the best series ever written. I'm just saying that for myself. This series is amazing, and I'm surprised people haven't made like psychoanalyzations of different characters in this series. I might have to do that myself at some point. But I'm really looking forward to both where the narrative for One Piece is going, where the narrative of My Hero Academia is going, and I hope you guys are there with me. I just enjoy doing this. You guys hear me say it all the time, but I just love doing this. Working on turning this into like a full-time thing, a full-time job where this is what I do all the time. This is what my paid job is, and I'm working towards it, and I'm looking forward to it happening this year. But all I can say is that I am grateful for the support that you show this channel. It really does mean the world to me. And the only thing that I ask in return is that if you enjoyed yourself, then I did my job. All I ask is that you enjoy yourself as best as you can. And if you left feeling better than you did when you came in, then I did my job. But with that being said, hope y'all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. And if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed what you saw here today, then consider subscribing because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. So have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later, peoples.